those guys on the ambulance, if you're going out on 20 calls or so, they're making more life and death decisions every single day than most guys ever even think about in a career. I can't tell you how many guys we've had that have committed suicide, and a lot of that, we can attribute that back to, the stress of the ambulance and stuff like that. Man, when I came on, I'll be honest with you, I had a guy, after my first fire, I went out and I was kind of hosing the junk off my firefighting coat. He goes, man, don't do that. That's bad luck. I didn't wash my first coat for 8 years. But then we started realizing when you get to that point when the fire's out and you're starting to clean up and all that burnt stuff is on the ground, we're walking through it and we're slogging through it and stirring up the dust and we're breathing all of that stuff in. So, lung cancer, larynx, we're finding out kidney, brain tumors, we've got about 11 different kinds of cancers that we're starting to find out that firefighters are getting probably 14% more times than most people just in the civilian world. And another stat that we have found out that most firefighters, probably about 60% of them, if they did at least 5 years, they'll probably develop cancer sometime in their lifetime. A guy asked me, he said, if you could go back to the 40-year firefighter, if you could go back and tell the guy your first year, give him some advice. I still remember in that interview, I told him, I said, I can teach you things to be a better firefighter. But if I don't teach you how to be a good person, I failed.
You're listening to the ATO Bridging the Divide podcast, brought to you by the Assist Officer Foundation. Since 1999, the ATO has given assistance to the first responder community, and now we want to give a platform to hear their incredible stories. We also want to hear the stories of the many people that support us. Our community is small, but it is strong. We have differences. We don't always agree, and we all make mistakes. But together we can grow, we can heal, and we can learn from those mistakes. And together we can bridge the divide. Welcome back, ATO listeners. I'm Joe King. I'm here with the legend, Misty Van Kuren.
Stop it, Joe.
Sergeant Josh Hertel. I want to give a quick shout out to former Dallas police officer Chris Wood. He was a badass at Southeast in narcotics and now lives in California with his beautiful wife Penny. He is a big ATO supporter and Bridging the Divide supporter, and I just want to say thank you and get your ass back to Texas.
Thanks, Chris.
Yep. I'm excited to welcome on today's guest. He grew up in Terrell, Texas, hometown of actor Jamie Foxx, and Terrell State Mental Hospital.
Well, we know him as Eric Bishop.
Eric Bishop, all right.
Yeah, there's a long story behind that name, but that was his name before he was Jamie Foxx.
He was a hell of an athlete, I know that.
He was pretty, well, I don't know, our football team sucked back then.
Yeah, he stood out. Yeah. He graduated from Terrell High in 1980 and was hired by Dallas Fire Department in 1981. He has nearly 4 decades of paramedic and firefighting experience in Dallas, Texas. He's married to Lori, father of Blair and Joshua, the president of the KRODLE Memorial Foundation. It's my honor to welcome on Dallas Fire and Rescue, David Lindsey.
Thanks, sir.
David, thanks for coming on.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. This is exciting. Yep.
Well, don't get too excited. We're pretty low tech.
You're gonna well, that's all right. Hey,
you ready to get into this?
You bet, man. Let's go.
You grew up in borderline East Texas in Terrell. When did you decide to join the fire department?
Well, it was kind of a weird thing. I went to college in Tyler, which is even further east, but I was a finance major, and I'm sitting there looking around, these classrooms, and I'm sitting here going, man, I'm going to be stuck in a cubicle with all of these knuckleheads. And that wasn't for me. I was always been an outdoor guy. I like to camp, hike, backpack, do stuff like that. So I was home on break, and my dad, who was he ended up doing 31 years with Dallas, and he was just like, hey, have you ever thought about taking the fire department, entrance exam? So I went and took it probably early summer and got hired on in August of that year, so here we are.
It's better to sit in a cubicle.
Yeah.
Second generation. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, yeah. Oh no. I mean, nothing against
It's in
you
your
guys.
blood.
Nothing against you guys in blue, but I think I had the best job in the world.
Yeah, we'll edit that out. That's good.
Probably do.
Hey, if I could turn back time.
Yeah.
All right. Why'd you pick DFD? Did you apply anywhere else near the hometown?
You know, it was like I said, it was just kind of one of those deals. My dad had suggested it, and I had a lot of respect for him. He was just a real stand-up guy when I was growing up. So just trusted it. And to be honest with you, I didn't even know that I was fit to be a fireman. But when I got to the academy, kind of started understanding the brotherhood of firemen.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, this is where I want to be. But never applied anywhere else. I did a little volunteer fire department work when I was in Terrell there, because that's where I still live there. And but no, just Dallas. That was my home base.
Well, you hired on in 81. You graduated in 80, so people can do the math. What was the culture like on DFD when you hired on there in the 80s?
Well, you know, the ambulance program had just come in the 70s, and I mean, I don't know if y'all remember back the old TV show Emergency.
Yeah.
When you walked into Parkland Hospital as a paramedic, man, I mean, you kind of walked on water out there. I mean, the program was so new, and people just weren't used to, paramedics walking into their house. And, in Dallas, you're dual trained. You're a fireman first and then a paramedic, but you're going to ride the ambulance about 50% of the time while you're active as a paramedic. But, man, it was awesome. I mean, you didn't have a lot of the politics back then, that we do now. A little bit simpler time for me. I mean, like you said, I came on the fire department at 19, so when I got out to the fire station, you can imagine. I mean, they told me, hey, run through that brick wall. Okay. I mean, I might be there, 10 hours later still trying to bust through it, but those old guys took advantage of that young kid.
I bet they did.
Oh, I bet they used and abused.
Yeah.
Well, Dallas in the 80s was the J.R. Ewing, Bobby Ewing,
Oh,
boom,
yeah.
the
Oh,
big
man,
hair,
it
the
was-
oil pumping.
Oh, SMU,
Yeah.
the Pony Express,
Pony
all that. Yeah,
Excess.
yeah, it was.
Where was your first station?
I was actually at 42's, which is on Mockingbird Lane, right in front of Love Field Airport, right there. And what was crazy about that was my dad had been assigned there. He was a Chiefs driver at that time. And when I was born, there was an old guy named Neil Hunter that was out there. And I remember going to the station and visiting, and that guy was there, and he drove the fire engine. Well, when I get my first assignment, guess who's still there? 24 years later, that guy is still there driving that same fire engine. So I kind of had a buddy when I showed up in my first assignment.
Wow.
Yeah.
You went to paramedic school in 84.
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe to the listener why that class and certification, why that's so important?
Well, if you look at it back then, we didn't realize how big a deal it would be. But if fast forward to today, probably 65% of the runs the fire department makes are EMS related. Whether and it could be car wrecks, stuff like that. But it's still, you're getting an ambulance with it. So back then, man, I kind of thought it was cool. It was just because you're normally riding with 4 guys on a fire engine or a fire truck, and you got an officer that's in charge of you. But when you're on the ambulance, there's just 2 of you, and you kind of get to make the decisions where you go, or and you're the whole city is basically your district. So the neat part about it was it was, like I said before, it was so new that those guys had a lot of respect. And to be honest with you, the 911 system wasn't there yet in the 80s, so it wasn't really getting abused. But man, paramedic school was one of the hardest things I'd ever gone through. I mean, already had almost associate's degree underneath my belt, and that paramedic school was way tougher.
What percentage of today's firefighters are also paramedics, would you think?
Oh, probably 2/3 of the.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they have got, when I got on the ambulance in 1984, just the need for more ambulances has grown every single year. So they probably got twice as many ambulances now as they did in 1984. So probably went from about, you got 59 fire stations, and they've got about 40, 45 ambulances in the city of Dallas. So.
Wow. Well, it seems like you'd want to make yourself more valuable.
It does.
Yeah.
It was, and it's another chance for those guys, because we've got an entire EMS division, so promotions, different stuff like that. There's a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of guys that do off duty work using that paramedic certification.
It's a utility that's founded on something good, but I know just talking to some firefighters, whether they be here or not, I think it's not comical, but one could say that the ambulance is probably something that's abused now.
Oh, yeah.
Overused, and you guys don't have enough of them.
Right.
Especially now with some of these stations that had some of the issues after like the tornado and whatnot. I don't know if they've ever rebuilt that one that was up there off of Northwest or wherever that was over there on
Preston and Royal up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if they ever did, but yeah, I see them all the time, especially being out there at the airport. And they are used for everything.
Oh, yeah.
You really don't think about it as a police officer going to these calls. When you need an ambulance, when somebody needs it, you call it. But I know you guys get call after call after call after call after call. So I can only imagine when it picked up speed back then. Like when the word got out, hey, I can call somebody and then come check my blood pressure.
Oh, yeah. Well, the busy ambulances in Dallas right now, they're for them to make 25 calls in a 24-hour period that's not unusual. Jeez. I mean, there's literally, I remember back when I was on the ambulance still, I never made my bed up. I just had what I called my paramedic blanket, and I just threw it over there, and I had a pillow on the bed, and if I catch an hour or two here or there. But, when I was on the fire engine or the fire truck, normally make my bed and stuff for the night, but when I was on the ambulance, I didn't even bother.
Yeah, there's something very mystique about the firehouse. It's kind of like a bunkhouse or a men's locker room. There's just there's something that's very mysterious.
Oh,
so,
from perspective, I see.
Yeah, from a female perspective, because that's your home away from home.
Right.
But do you remember any good stories about being in the firehouse?
I can't tell you those. No,
no. So it is.
No,
probably don't want to.
We'll pause it for a second, and then you tell her.
No, I mean it really. And you're right. I always tell people that are kind of asking those type of questions. I said if you take like Saving Private Ryan and combine it with Animal House, the movies, that's about kind of what it's like, because you never know when you're looking life and death in the face, or there's so many stories out there, and like you said, we live together a third of our life, because you're there 24 hours. You're not just working, you're eating, you're showering, you're sleeping together, cooking together, everything. So it's like living together. And I'm trying to think of there's a ton of stories. Firemen and police officers are a lot alike. I remember when I first came to work, my wife and I had dated about 2 years while I was on the job, and before we got married. So she kind of knew, okay, they're gonna do some things, so don't get too far, to one side or the other. And I remember the first time she didn't fall for it, but back before cell phones and everything, we just had little landline phones in the fire station, and she calls up one time, and I don't think we had gotten married yet, but she called and she said, "Hey, is David Lindsey there?" And they said, "Yeah, hang on, he's out in the parking lot talking to his girlfriend. I'll go get him."
Oh, man.
Unfortunate.
Yeah. But luckily, she kind of knew from my dad being on the job and everything. So it was, she took it.
They're a bunch of assholes too, like cops.
That's what I say. We both wear blue for a reason. We both have got that sick personality, I think.
No, you have to. It's a coping mechanism.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
You were a paramedic for 9 years. Then you become a full-time firefighter. Can you describe that transition?
That one, it's a difference between kind of I don't know, it's kind of elation a little bit, because you're so busy on that ambulance, and you got to think about it. I mean, those guys on the ambulance, if you're going out on 20 calls or so, they're making more life and death decisions every single day than most guys ever even think about in a career. One of the worst shifts I ever had on the ambulance, I only made 6 calls, but 2 of those were dead on the scene. 2 of them were people that we had that died on the way to the hospital with us, and then 2 of them that we did CPR from their house all the way to the hospital. So when you get off and you just go to the firefighting aspect of it, it's a lot of guys are way happy. Because you just take a lot of that stress off. I mean, we've had, I can't tell you how many guys we've had that have committed suicide, and a lot of that we can attribute that back to the stress of the ambulance and stuff like that. Because you think about it, they're intubating people, putting IVs and stuff in. They're doing EKGs, cardioverting, different stuff like that. That stuff that they do in an emergency room. and here's two guys out here that have somebody's life in their hands
in a moving truck.
That's another whole nother story itself.
Yeah.
But and then with the fact that those people have to go to the hospital, and then one of the things that I always dreaded, I worked over in Cedar Springs and Oak Lawn area. I worked in South Dallas. I worked in Oak Cliff. You have a bad shooting or something like that. When you get done with all that, you're not done, because you've got to go back and you've got to clean that ambulance up to be ready for the next one. So I can't tell you how many times we have mopped and hosed out blood out of the back of the ambulance at the hospital. So it's just one of those things that it's just a constant wear on you.
Nerve-wracking, going through the 80s when the AIDS epidemic became alive and well, and then I'm sure everybody was terrorized, of having to go back there and wash out blood and whatnot. And I wouldn't want to do any of that, not because of that, just in generalities. You guys had to deal with a lot. Well,
what was funny about that, I was at Station 11, which is at Cedar Springs and Oak Lawn, right in that part of that district. And they came out weekly and updated us when that first came out. I mean, nobody knew what it was.
Yeah.
And then they thought it was just, to the gay community. And then they came out and, drug abusers and different things. So we were getting something different every single week. And you have to remember, back in the 80s, you're talking about, what was it like on the ambulance and stuff like that. I remember we used to take a bottle of hydrogen peroxide and we'd just take the lid off and screw a spray trigger on the top of it. And you'd have blood all over your uniform shirts and everything, and you just come in there and hang it up on your locker door and spray it down with that peroxide, and it just dripped down on a towel or something, throw it in the washer and start over again. And man, when AIDS came along, it's like, okay, well, wait a minute, maybe what those gloves that we should be wearing, maybe that's a good idea. So,
yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, because that was just killing folks.
Oh yeah,
and it was a long, painful death, and it was just. I mean, we're talking about COVID right now. And I can imagine during the 80s because it was such an unknown.
Yeah, exactly. Right there.
Yeah.
Unknown.
Wow.
Yeah.
How much has your gear changed over the years?
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, did that time period have some change in your protective gear?
When I first came on, our helmets were they were cool looking. But they were just made out of like a hard composite plastic type stuff and everything. There was an impact cap inside of it and stuff, and I'm sure they were adequate. But our coats were a lot longer. We didn't wear the pants that we wear now, what we call bunker pants.
Right.
We just wore what we called 3/4 boots. They were basically boots that would come all the way up to your hips, but you could roll them down. If you weren't inside a fire. But I can't tell you how many times I've gotten into a fire back then, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute. Man, my crotch area is getting a little warm here, and not because of anything, exciting, but
unfortunately.
But that wasn't really. It was exposed. I mean, our coats were longer back then. They would go down to about our knees. And when I first came to work, the fire department didn't give you a flashlight. They didn't give you firefighting gloves, and we didn't have the hoods that go over our heads like we do now. The Nomex hoods, we didn't have those. So, and to this day, I can literally take my fingers and rub them right here. I got burned so many times right here on my jawline where our mask would stop and your collar would come up. I can't feel that. So it's one of those weird, back then we didn't know any different. It's just what it was.
So the kind of gloves, I mean, would you just wear like those oven mitts, like to take out a hot pan with the uniform?
Do you ever remember the old orange Fireball gloves that the mechanics and stuff used to wear? Yeah. That's what most guys wore. They gave us cotton gloves now.
Cotton gloves.
Yeah. When I came out, we did find a fire department distributor that had Kevlar gloves, and most of us bought. But back then those things were, heck, in the early '80s they were $60.
Yeah.
And man,
firefighters and cops are poor.
Yeah. When you're going through the academy, you're not making much money. So that was a big investment. Yeah.
In almost 4 decades of firefighting in major city. You have some critical incidents that you went through that just really stuck with you and rattled you and took a while to recover from, if you recovered fully at all?
It's funny because I was one of those guys that, when you back in the 80s when you came on, the answer was, hey man, suck it up and do your job. Sure. And you probably still hear some of the guys saying stuff like that nowadays, but I do remember before I even was a paramedic, I remember we had made a run somewhere around Cedar Springs area over there, and as we're going down there, the guy our officers, he says, hey, he says, get your firefighting coat on and get a tool. And we were going on a medical call. And so I am a young rookie, 20 years old, and I'm like, what are we doing? Well, we get off, and before we go in the apartment, he says there's a dog has just attacked a baby.
Oh.
And so we get in there, and this lady had a dog that had just literally picked the baby up out of the crib, chewed its face off, and put it back in the crib. And today, the thing that still stands out in my mind is I still remember that lady going, now y'all are not going to do anything to my dog, right? He's okay? And you think, looking back on that, I'm like, man, what was she thinking? But probably there's actually two that really stand out in my mind, and I know most firemen and police officers when it involves kids, that's a big deal. Well, when my first child, which was my daughter, was 3 months old, I had my first pediatric CPR. Sid's case, we go into a house. The lady says, don't know what happened. We just went in there to check on them this morning. She was all purple and stuff. Well, I was riding with a bunch of guys that I had worked with before, and I didn't even realize till we got to the hospital, but I wouldn't let anybody do CPR on the baby but me. And we got there, and they were like, you okay? And I go, what? And they go, we tried to, let us do CPR, and you wouldn't let us. So the funny thing about it is my wife still gives me a hard time about this one. She says, yeah, you remember when you called and said, wake Blair, our daughter, up? And I go, I don't remember that. She says, yeah, she's been asleep for about 20 minutes for her afternoon nap, and you made me wake her up. So I was like, well, it was just one of those deals, young dad, young paramedic and everything. And then the other one, this one probably stands out more in my mind than anything. We were kind of over in the Urbandale, Pleasant Grove area over there, and we get a call for, emergency OB, which is, possible childbirth. Well, we walk in, and from the door, I can see a kid standing up in a crib crying and just screaming, and I'm like, what in the world? And the door was wide open, and we could hear this voice saying, come in. Well, we get to the back, and the mom is 3 kids are already at school. She's got one in the crib, and she's trying to deliver one. We get in there, she's delivered the head, and that's it. But through the delivery process, she has choked that baby. So we're trying to get the baby delivered because we know that, the baby's not breathing. We can tell he's starting to turn blue. But he ended up being 10 pounds, 12 ounces. But me and my partner tried to do CPR in that situation, literally between her legs.
Wow. And
the bad thing about that was my wife was pregnant again with our son, and she was about 8 months pregnant. So that one always
it has parallels between what you had going on in personal life. And then,
and that's a big thing that we're seeing now because I work. I'm on our critical incident stress management team, and we go out and debrief peer to peer when guys have bad runs like that, and that's one of the things we notice that it really affects guys when you have some kind of parallel going on like you're talking about. But that one really stood out in my mind because even to this day I can remember being over in Baylor emergency room and seeing that kid when they finally did get him out. Little muscles in his arms. He's just the healthiest looking kid, but he was dead because she never did call anybody when she started going into labor. She thought she was okay.
Could do it herself, and
then we get there and have to do CPR between her legs, everything. So.
Yeah, and you still have a very distinct visual of that.
Oh, I can see that baby just like that baby's laying on the table down there. I mean, literally can see that, and it just.
No, when you're talking, I could see I could actually see. The listener can't obviously, but I could see a physical effect when you're talking about that.
Sure.
Wow.
Sure.
And how long ago was that?
That was probably 1987.
Yeah. It said that's what people just don't realize. This shit will carry you. It's going to stay with you until you die.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I think that myself personally, I made a mistake. I never wanted to bring that junk into my house, so I never really. I told my wife sometimes, hey, had a bad run, had to do CPR on a baby or something like. But I never talked about it for 30 years.
Just build up.
Well, and then I know we'll get into the TODD KRODLE story here in a little bit, but after that, I kind of started talking to my wife, and I said, let me tell you how I'm feeling, and it was kind of funny. Things got better after that. Oh yeah, tremendously. That was a big thing, and I think now with our peer support programs, and I know y'all have got psychologists and y'all have got different teams also on y'all's side that you got to start the conversation. You've got to talk about it, or it's going to eat you up.
It was taboo back then. Hell,
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But it's still interesting how something as simple as effective communication between you and your wife, which obviously is your partner in life, so it's easier to lean on them. But just that alone can help release some of that. When you talk about the baby, we talk about all these other incidents on this podcast, and sometimes it gets frustrating because you think to yourself, like, does the city even know? Does the city management even know, or does anybody, anywhere outside of these departments even know what is carried by individuals, no matter what uniform you wear?
Right. As
you walk through these, as you do your job, as you walk through your career, the stuff that's just carried on, to really fulfill the mission of public safety for a city.
Right.
It's kind of
exactly.
Well, I don't think it's hard for leaders that are outside of our organizations to really understand what we go through mentally, because they don't have to deal with it. They don't carry it home, and they don't see it. They see it on the news,
Right.
They hear a briefing about it. But for the people that actually have to see this kind of crap right in front of them and make split-second decisions, that may or may not, I guarantee you probably still think of ways that maybe you could have done things better and had a different outcome with that baby. I mean, it wasn't no one's fault there, but I've been in situations I'm like, damn it, I just wish I'd have done this.
Right. Right. Oh yeah, there has been so many calls over the year that you get back to the station and you just run that inventory list through your mind. Okay, what did we do good and what did we do bad? And that you talk about, do these people even know? One of the things when I retired, I don't know if y'all get this as police officers, I guess, unless you're working the night shift all the time, but I told my wife after about a month, I said, I did not realize there's people out there that sleep all night. And that was a big thing for me. I mean, my mental health got better because I was getting 8 hours of sleep consistently. Because, even when I would be at the fire station, even if I wasn't going out, if the ambulance was going out or somebody else was going out, I'm waking up all night long. And so when I get home the next day, I'm still tired. And, even though I've got that day off, it's still affecting me. And when you talk about that, how many people just take that for granted and don't even realize what we're doing? If you're working the graveyard shift for you guys, I mean,
I don't think people can understand. Even you saying it, 20 runs in a night, I think a lot of people have the perception that firemen sleep in their cozy little beds. And the firemen that we've talked to within our city, they don't sleep when they're on shift.
Oh, no. Yeah. There's a lot of them do. I mean, and especially those guys that are on the ambulances nowadays. No, they don't.
They don't even eat.
I can tell you one of my favorite stories. There was a guy that used to be at a station. I rode the ambulance with him a little bit, but he was at another station at the time. Kind of a know-it-all, a bragger guy, but not a lot of people liked him back then. But I was riding the ambulance over in Pleasant Grove, and we had literally left the station that morning at 6:45. Normally relieve guys at around 7 o'clock, but we were there early, so we went ahead and took the call. At probably about 7:30 that evening, I was stopped at the McDonald's on Buckner and Elam. We were sitting on the back of the ambulance trying to grab a Big Mac, and we called another run. We hadn't been back to the station in over 12 hours, and this guy comes on the radio, and he says, hey, we'll take that run off of you guys. Well, they came past us, so we knew they were close to us, but they knew we hadn't been back to the station all day long, and we were on our 14th run at that point and hadn't eaten in over 12 hours. So
there's something special about food with firemen and eating in their kitchen. Is there? Were you a cook?
I cooked at one of the stations after I got off the ambulance rotation for about 6 years. I did it full time just because it was, you see those guys on the ambulance. And plus, I was at a busy station most of my career. I retired out of 37s up at Greenville and Park Lane. So I just kind of thought, that's kind of my gift to those guys. You don't worry about cooking and stuff like that. But we've got some really good cooks in the fire department. But I'm going to say that tongue-in-cheek because we've got some really bad ones too.
Is there a favorite meal that's like nostalgic for you that you remember?
Oh, chicken fried steak.
Okay.
Man, it's great. Man, when I came to work, every breakfast was fried eggs, potatoes, biscuits and gravy, and bacon. And I mean, now you walk in the fire station, you're probably going to get oatmeal and fruit and yogurt, stuff like that. These guys are trying to eat a lot healthier, a lot younger and stuff. But breakfast was the one I always remembered. But chicken fried steak and gravy.
Misty and I used to be on SWAT together, and I remember when we would run these doubles or triples, and we'd plan them at the fire stations as a mid-ground, and man, we'd go in there while they were cooking.
Oh, yeah.
God, it was hard to concentrate. It smelled so good in there all the time. They'd offer you soda. Be like, what are you guys going to do with that steak now?
Yeah, my grandfather is a retired Oklahoma City fire, and he was he was the station house cook.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we've got a couple. One of the guys that's on our board at the KRODLE Foundation, his name is Milton Williams, and he's chef type. I mean, he literally he's won competitions, been to New York City and stuff. He cooks so well, and I'm like, I don't know if I could eat that well at the fire station and function right.
All right, I saw in your bio that you drove the truck. Can you describe the listener the training and the importance of driving the truck and how hard that is? Because I couldn't drive that thing.
Well, a lot of people don't understand truck and engine in the fire service. The engine,
I don't.
Yeah, the engine is the smaller looking vehicle that it carries water and it carries all the hose, and then the truck is the big one that carries the ladder on top of it. And then it carries a lot of equipment that we do, extrication, ventilation, different stuff like that, and everything. So, but the last truck that I drove at 37 Station. Now you're talking about 12-foot wide, 48-foot long. And it's got a 103-foot aerial on the back, and it weighs 70,000 pounds.
Is that easy? Is that easy to drive through the Chick-fil-A drive-through?
It depends on if you got your lights and sirens on or not.
All right.
How much does that cost?
Yeah.
That one. Well, now most of those are about $1.1 million. When I first came to work, a truck like that was probably $380,000. But once you outfit that thing with all the equipment and stuff on it, it's probably close to $2 million.
So you have 40 years of experience. You got to tell us what's the best truck that you ever drove?
The best truck?
Yeah, that your favorite, the one that you felt like was the best piece of equipment.
Probably the last one we had when I was at, because normally they try to replace those pieces of equipment. An engine will make more runs per month than a truck company will, just because they have different roles. So the engine companies, they try to replace those about every 8 to 10 years, and the truck company, they try to replace those about every 12 to 15 years. Like right now in Dallas, we're in a pretty good spot where they're getting most of them right on schedule to replace. But really, when you get a new piece of equipment, man, that's like a kid in a candy store.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you guys if you get a new squad car or something like that, but the good thing about it is the technology. Because every time, if you think about it, if you're only swapping out about every 10 years, you've got 10 years worth of technology to catch up on. And when I first came to work, we used to have to, like, generators for portable lights. We had an old generator you had to take out by hand, and you had to carry it to wherever you're going. And then you just we had basically extension cords in bags, and you would hook them up and hook them to the lights. Well, now the generator is on the apparatus. It's on the truck, and you've got a reel that has got like 250 foot of extension cord, and you just reel that thing off and you just hook it up, and it's so simpler. So probably my favorite one is just the last one that we had, just because the technology was so much better and everything. The equipment was more, I mean, I don't know if you police officers like us firemen, we're always thinking of ways to try to make it better. Guys will sit out there in the apparatus bay sometime going, well, if we just do this would be so much cooler than what we're doing now. So
it could always be done better, but there's also a learning curve whenever you get a new piece of equipment.
Yeah.
By the time you perfect that new equipment, then they come out with something better or new that you got to learn.
Well, and again, I think especially when you're driving and stuff like that, I think experience is a big key, because we would go out and train. We would go out to our academy and do driving courses and stuff like that. But like in my district up there in 37's district around up there, I mean, I could tell you where the bad dips were. I could tell you where, you're fixing to, you got to slow down, or you got to be in the right lane, or you got to be in the center lane, or so, it's you just kind of learn those things. So,
learn the feel of it.
Oh, yeah. And I think that's kind of, in general in the fire service, I think experience is probably the best teacher.
It's in policing too,
yeah.
Experience.
Yeah.
You can sit through all kinds of classes and go through different trainings, but in the back of your mind, it's training, but the real deal and the real experience is what you learn the most from. Is driving the truck, is that a task that that sought after, or people try to get away from it?
No, actually, it kind of depends. You've got guys that are kind of, on that fast track. They want to be an officer. They want to be in charge and stuff like that. But then you've got some guys that they're mechanically inclined. And really you have to have a lot of common mechanical knowledge if you're going to drive one of those. Because like if you're pumping, a fire engine, you've got a 1,500 GPM pump on that thing, and you've got 1,000 feet of hose out there. You've got to figure out how to get all that stuff from a fire plug to that fire engine, and then from the fire engine to the fire. So there's lots of hydraulics, lots of math and stuff like that involved. So a lot of those guys, they strive to be a driver because they don't really want to be, riding on the back end, but they want to have a role. But a lot of them take a lot of pride that they feel like that they're kind of the center point, of all the activity, especially if they're driving a fire engine. Now, a fire truck. There's so many different jobs on a truck. Like you may be inside pulling ceiling down. You may be on the roof cutting a hole. You may be inside looking for, victims that you don't know where they're at, and it's hot, it's smoky, and the building you're in's on fire, and you're sitting here thinking to yourself, what am I doing? But the driver role, there's a lot of guys that they relish that. There's some of them, it's just a step, up to chief or captain or whatever they're wanting to do. I mean, I was always one of those guys. I wanted to be the first guy through the door. I had guys when I was going through the academy said, "Oh, you'll be an officer one day." And man, after I got out the station, I'm like, "I'll never be an officer. Don't want to do it," because I wanted to be where the activity was.
I got to get this in. I tried to do it a minute ago. How many times did you guys watch the movie Backdraft?
Oh, geez. It's funny.
I wanted to ask it too.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
funny you say that because when those guys go in and you see all of this stuff. Inside of a fire is so exactly opposite. I mean, you could put your hand on your face mask and you could not see your hand in front of your face. So everything we do is by feel. And as you get some time on, you kind of learn to listen for certain things. Like I could literally, by the end of my career, I could go into a front door, and if I would just take a couple of seconds, I could tell you which side of the house the fire was on just by sound. Because you would hear certain sounds that you know, okay, that's a fire burning. But the funny thing about it is you see, I guess it's Kurt Russell. He goes in that fire. He's got his coat open, and they were wearing those boots, like you saw those little rubber boots
folded down.
Yes, folded down. Those are what we call those 3/4 boots. And I had a lieutenant at the time. He was exactly like that, and he was sitting there going, "That bullshit, it's so fake." And we go, "That's you right there." And he would do exactly that. So. But the stuff you saw around the fire station, the guys having to cook, the rookies having to cook that meal, and and them giving them a hard time. That there was a lot of truth in that one, but a lot of the the fire scenes and stuff like that, a little bit far fetched.
Yeah, we had Chief Beal on here. Did you listen to his episode?
I haven't listened to his yet, but I know Eric.
That.
Yeah, I know Eric.
He was trying to exfil that house.
Yeah.
He had to work solely on feel.
Right. Yeah.
What was that one show with Leary? Remember that firefighter show? Rescue Me. Yeah.
That one went around the firehouses.
Oh, I bet.
Big, man. Everybody. Matter of fact, there was a couple of stations that I had friends at that they would literally, they wouldn't play cards, they wouldn't play anything. If that show was on, everything at the station stopped. If you get a run, well, you go ahead, but everything at the station stopped, and they were going to watch that show.
Damn.
So, yeah,
that's cool though. I mean, that's one of the few series that actually focus on firefighters.
Right.
I mean, there's plenty of cop shows throughout TV history.
Yeah.
Who did you say was the station that listens to us?
21.
21. Shout out to 21.
Yeah. Shout out to DFR 21.
Yeah, the guys out at left field.
Yeah.
You were at the Cedar Springs station. That's
Yeah,
the oldest station in the city, right?
No,
it's not.
Well, Cedar Springs, yes. The one down in Cedar Springs in Oklahoma, yes.
Okay,
that is the oldest one.
It still has
still got the poles inside. Yep, and it's what's funny if you go one of them is brass. There's a story behind that because there's 4 poles in that station. 3 of them are not. And back when the World Wars were going on, they came in there and they took 3 of those out to supply the war effort for ammo.
Wow.
And there's 1 pole that's in there. It's brass. So. So that's a lot of people don't know that. And when I was there back in 1984, they were going through a remodel, but it had a historical marker on there, so they had to kind of had to keep the the structure the way it was, and then they had to just kind of build around it. So it was a lot different when I was there. When I first got there, if you went to where the truck hole was and you looked straight up in the ceiling, there was like a trap door in the attic. And I always asked the guys, I said, what is that trap door? And they said, well, we'll take you up there. Well, you went up there, that was where they used to drop the hay down for the horses that ran out of that when they had horse-drawn engines. So that was the neat part about that station. And that station back in the early 80s, it was wide open. I mean, we left the doors open all night. Nobody bothered us, and it was it was a fun place. It was a fun place. That guy
likes to steal your ambulances nonstop.
Yeah, we had a couple of those.
Well, this is I think I read this is the 2022 is the 150 year anniversary of the DFR. They've been around longer than Dallas PD.
Really? And I didn't know that. I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
You talked about many critical incidents that you've been in, and 4 decades of being paramedic and fighting fires in Dallas. I want to take you to an incident on August 14, 2011. Can you describe this incident and how it changed your life?
Plum Grove, South Oak, well, kind of West Oak Cliff, right off 408 over there. I had a cousin, name's Todd KRODLE. He had made lieutenant in the fire department, and he was working at that station. Loved his crew, loved working in Oak Cliff. Well, he was the guy that went through the roof that day. They had a fire. Fire had started in a downstairs apartment. It had worked its way into the attic, and he and another guy had been given the assignment to go to the attic and cut a vent hole to kind of let the smoke and the heat and everything out, so the guys below them could work better. And I remember this one vividly because we worked on the same shift, and I had taken the first 8 hours off that day, and it was a Sunday. And when I came in, we'd made a run on the truck at my station, and we came back. Well, I remember one of our guys came through and says, hey, who did they just transport to Parkland from that fire in Oak Cliff? And I'm sitting there going, I said, well, hang on. I said, I've got a family member that works down there. Let me just give him a call. And so I start dialing his number, and I go, well, he's probably at that fire. So didn't think a whole lot about it. Well, probably 30, 40 minutes went by, and then a little while later, another guy comes in, and they go, who is the lieutenant on 26 engine? And I just sat down, and I knew it was my cousin, because at that time we were starting to get reports that he was bad. And so here I am at work, and my lieutenant comes over to me. He says, hey, you need to go to Parkland Hospital. I said, no, hang on. We don't know anything yet. And he says, no. He says, get out of here. He says, if we have to ride short, he says, we'll take care of it, but you need to be with your family. So probably about 5 minutes later, I ended up calling one of the guys down at the alarm at our dispatch center. And just so happened, the guy that picked up the phone, really, really good friend of mine. And I said, hey, Monty, this is David. And he said, he's gone. And so he kind of knew, what I was calling about. So I take my lieutenant up on, I drive out to Parkland. Now, here's the weird thing. My family probably talks more than any family out there from top to bottom, everybody in our family. We talk a lot. From the time I was driving from Greenville and Park Lane to Parkland Hospital, not a single one of my family members were answering their phone. Finally got a hold of my dad, and I just told him, I said, hey, Todd's at Parkland, he got hurt. I said, I don't know anything. I didn't tell any of them that I already knew he had passed away. But I said, I'm heading that way. And I said, get a hold of your sister, who my dad and Todd's mom were brother and sister. So as I'm kind of working through that, I get out there. Well, then I remember walking in the door at Parkland, and 2 of the deputy chiefs that were there knew our connection. And one of them just rolled his eyes, and he said, man, I did not even think about calling you. So finally, we get all the family notified. His wife had left the house to go wash the car, and they had a hard time getting hold of them. But one of the battalion chiefs finally got in touch with them and got them on the way out there. And then the tough thing for me was Todd had a younger brother, my other cousin, and he was actually he's a minister for First Baptist Arlington. He was doing a youth weekend in Amarillo, and so we had to try and get him back. And what was so crazy, we were trying to get him on a flight to come back to Amarillo, and he was just fixing to head to the airport. I think Southwest had either made room for him on a flight or something, and then out of the clear blue sky, some guy shows up and says, hey, we've got a doctor that his son is a police officer, says you need to go with him. He had no idea where he's going, so he just takes his stuff from the car he was getting and he gets in this other one. Well, this doctor had a private jet and took him right to the airport. He got him home in 45 minutes. And so that was kind of the cool thing. But then we kind of had to go through, the funeral that week. That was kind of a tough week for us because Todd's wife, we're talking about the ultimate family. They had 2 kids at that time. I think Cade and Caroline were 9 and 11. And it was tough. It was tough on Kelly. She had a really hard time that week. But our family, like I said, we're big. Normally we have Christmas or Thanksgiving, something. There's like 70 people over at somebody's house. So we're always together. And again, we rally together. But there again, the fire department family. Geez, y'all been to officers' funerals. We're the same way. I mean, a matter of fact, I think the firemen kind of even overdo it a lot of times. We're so much there, and for my family to see the traditions that I had seen my whole career, that was what was pretty neat for me. And I guess the downside of it was the day we buried Todd was my 30th anniversary on the fire department.
Wow, how long did he had? How many years of service did he have?
17, a little over 17, almost 18 years. Yeah.
What did this incident inspire you to create?
Well, there's a little group out there called the KRODLE Memorial Foundation. It was kind of interesting because we were just kind of trying to figure out what life was going to be like without Todd. I still remember his brother, Kurt, was asking so many questions. Why did this happen? Did somebody do something wrong? Did he do something wrong? And I remember the guys taking me out there to Plum Grove. They walked me through the whole thing. And if you see where he fell through the roof, it literally was basically the reason he didn't go all the way through the ceiling was because of 6 DirecTV cables. He got tangled up in those in a soffit over a bathtub. And so as we're talking about all this stuff, there's a lot of stuff that, a lot of people in the community come out and want to help, want to recognize and stuff like that. And I know Todd's family kind of got worn down a little bit by that. So about 2 years later, Todd's battalion chief, a guy named Kenny Moore, he came in and he called a meeting with about probably 5 of our family members and about 3 of the guys that had worked with Todd. And he said, I want to do something where we don't forget Todd. So we're kind of sitting in the room. We're like, well, what do you got in mind? And, at this time when he says this, it kind of gets my wheels to spinning. And I'm like that guy, probably would have been on all kinds of Ritalin if I was a kid, but my ADHD kicked in if I've got that diagnosis. But he said, well, let's do some scholarships. And we kind of all looked at each other, and I said, you know what? I said, Chief, I'm not trying to disrespect you here, but if we're going to do this, let's do it big. Let's do something where just by our actions, Todd's going to be remembered every single time we do something. So luckily for us, we had a former firefighter that is now an attorney, and she helped us draw up the paperwork. We formed a nonprofit, and we started doing stuff. We did some events, some conferences, sold a bunch of T-shirts, different stuff like that to raise money. And as we got to moving forward, we were able to help some people. We were able to help some line of duty death families. We were able to help some of the families of firefighters who have been critically injured, similar to Eric Bill, and we do give out scholarships. Man, that was one of the original ideas, but also we put a little clause into our mission statement that we just wanted to be available to help with whatever way. So, and you can call that a catch-all clause or whatever you want to, but we didn't want to limit ourselves. Well, if somebody came to us and said, hey, my husband got a cancer diagnosis and we've got to go through, chemo treatments for a month in MD Anderson, well, here, let us pay for the hotel for you. Little things like that. We just wanted to be able to be available. So moving forward, we had heard about this group out there called Carry the Load, and, we knew that the assist the officer was part of that, and we kind of started making some phone calls around, and we were like, what the heck, let's just apply. Well, we got accepted the first year we applied, and that was in, I think, 2014. And we've been partners with them ever since. And what's been neat about it is we've just made ourselves available to them, and we've been able to help fire departments all over the U.S. Just got through with a guy that passed away, and his son was only 16 years old, and they didn't really know what to do for their 16-year-old, his kid. And so we called them and helped them get a trust set up. We helped them get a scholarship fund set up, and just started, kind of walking them through it, not really doing a whole lot of financial assistance on our end, but just kind of walking them through what we had been through as far as what had happened with Todd, and and all the kind of the love that was given back to us. So we're 8 years into it, and not really sure of the numbers, but I know probably a year or two ago we'd spent over $500,000 in assistance to families.
That's amazing.
Where can listeners go to? Where can they go and look up your the KRODLE Memorial Foundation site? www.krodlememorialfoundation.org, or we've got a Facebook and a Twitter page, either one. And it'll take you to it. And if you're a Dallas Fire Department family, you've got a senior in high school, we're accepting applications right now, so I'll throw that pitch out there. But please do.
Yeah, but that's and you can donate or you can ask for assistance on that site. And matter of fact, right now we've got 3 different families that we're working with. One of them we just had a guy. Actually had 2 families in the last 2 months that had firefighter suicides. Yeah. We're helping both of those, and we've also got, like I said, the scholarship application. And a couple of years ago, we realized that not everybody's going to college, and we even found out a lot of our firefighters have special needs kids. So we created a scholarship for special needs kids, and so that's one of the things that we're working with right now. So. But it's just been a neat organization, and the neat part about it is our board is made up of half the guys on it are firefighters that worked with Todd, and the other half is our family. So
that's great.
So that's what's cool.
You're also doing something for education and prevention. For our listeners out there, I don't think they understand the toxins that you guys are exposed to within your career that present problems later on in life. And we talked about that a little bit earlier, but can you elaborate on that so our listeners understand that sometimes the problems don't start to present themselves until later on after retirement, right, and you've been exposed to all these things? Right.
Yeah. Well, how much time have we got? No,
as long as you want.
Yeah. No, it was funny. I say funny. I'm one of those guys that I go to church. I mean, it's just one of those things. I've got a strong belief in God, and whenever Todd passed away, we had our chaplain's office was just we had half of them were moving out and half of them were just starting to move in. So nobody really was there to take care of his benefits paperwork and stuff. So, it just got dumped in my lap. I remember a guy from our Dallas Firefighters Association just came in and said, "Hey, can you handle this?" And I said, "Well, man," I said, "I got a telephone. I'll call people." So fast forward 6 months later, we've got all of the benefits for Todd's wife and everything, and then the next firefighter we have that dies in the line of duty is Stan Wilson, and I do his wife's paperwork. So kind of getting to be, pretty well versed in this. And so somewhere in there, right after Stan Wilson passed away, we had a guy that died from cancer in 2007. Well, what I didn't know, his wife had been fighting in workman's comp court to get this classified as an on-duty injury, which it's state law since 2007. That if you have a certain type of cancer, that it is job-related through the carcinogens and stuff that we breathe or absorb through our skin or whatever way we get it. So they won this case in workman's comp court. Well, there's some other benefits that are out there that we had done with our other firefighters, and so I get a call from a man named Tom Taylor, and he said, "Hey, can you file the state benefits for this young lady that lost her husband to cancer?" And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what." I said, "I don't mind doing it." I said, "I've never done a cancer case, but we'll give it a whirl." Well, that kind of was like in April of that year. Well, I remember she got approved in November as a line of duty death. So she got all the benefits just like Todd's wife did and everything. But the thing I vividly remember about that, making this long story longer, when she came to me, I told her, I'm going to need y'all's marriage, license, and I'm going to need your birth certificates, your kids, all this stuff, and stuff you just had to have to file the paperwork. Well, and I said, if you got any medical records, well, I should have kind of focused that down a little bit, because she brought me an entire box. And one of the things a lot of people didn't know at the time was I had a brother who was a police officer in Terrell. Started out in Dallas, but he moved with a friend of his to Terrell to be a police officer there, but he died of a brain tumor at the age of 35 years old. So I'm looking through this firefighter's cancer medical records. Well, his cancer is in exactly the same place that my brother's was. I just kind of closed that folder up and set it aside, picked the next one up. Well, this guy's brain tumor that he had, and he had to go see a neurologist, he was the same neurologist as my brother's. I open up the next file. His neurosurgeon was the same. The person that signed the death certificate was exactly the same doctor as my brother's. So I just told the lady, I said, man, good Lord put me here today. I couldn't walk away from this. I get struck in the head by lightning or something. But that kind of started where I was at. And one of the things that we found out, if you go back to what we call legacy construction, back when they built, buildings, apartments, houses, stuff with real lumber, we didn't have a whole lot to worry, about then. If wood burned, it was a natural process. It burned. It wasn't healthy for you, but it's not like pressure treated lumber today. And, so somewhere in that process, I got involved with the Firefighters Cancer Support Network, and I started doing some instruction for them, trying to teach the guys how to protect themselves, how to wear their gear all the time, how to wear their self-contained breathing apparatus all the way through our overhaul period. Because I'll be honest with you, I was one of those guys that, man, I was gonna look good in front of those old, firefighters. I was gonna take my mask off when they took theirs off, even though snot's running down my nose and I'm crying, because of the smoke that's still lingering in the air. But then we started realizing when you get to that point when the fire's out and you're starting to clean up and all of that burnt stuff is on the ground, we're walking through it and we're slogging through it and stirring up the dust and we're breathing all of that stuff in. So, lung cancer, larynx, we're finding out kidney, brain tumors, we've got about 11 different kinds of cancers that we're starting to find out that firefighters are getting probably 14% more times than most, people just in the civilian world. And another stat that we have found out that most firefighters, probably about 60% of them, if they did at least 5 years, they'll probably develop cancer sometime in their lifetime, even after they retired. And we're starting to see a lot of those numbers pop up in our retirees right now.
Well, it's a shitty and dangerous job, but it's got to be done. But hey, the new protective gear that's come out within the last 15, 20 years, is that help? I know we're always, innovation and the new products that come out, but what have you seen help the most?
I think one of the biggest things that we have seen is cleaning our gear. In Dallas right now, they're starting to put what we call extractors, or these great big commercial washing machines in the fire station. So if we go to a fire, we can take them back and we can put them in there. We can clean them properly, and then we can have clean gear to put on. Now, one of the things that Dallas did, and I ought to give shout out to several of our council people, but because we just politic them hard to get us a second set of gear. So every firefighter in the city of Dallas right now has 2 sets of gear. So if they go to a fire, they can come back and put their dirty gear in the cleaner, clean it up, and they can put on a clean set, and while that other one is getting taken care of. So that's been a big deal for us. We do a thing called on-scene decon, which you literally wash your gear kind of with a spray hose and a spray nozzle on the scene, so you can get that all those carcinogens and stuff off of there even before you get back in the apparatus. And there's kind of a couple of catchphrases called shower within an hour. You always want to get back, get that stuff off of you. One of the other things that's really starting to kind of be nationwide and prevalent all over the place, U.S. and Canada specifically, is not wearing our gear into the fire station. When I came on, it wasn't anything to walk into the kitchen, sit down. I've got these firefighting pants on, and I've got all of this soot and junk all over me. Well, now we've got signs on the door that says no bunker gear beyond this point, and that just basically means you can't wear your firefighting gear. When I first got on, you set your boots and your bunker pants right beside your bed, and those things, and man, when I came on, I'll be honest with you, I had a guy, after my first fire, I went out and I was kind of hosing the junk off my firefighting coat. He goes, man, don't do that. That's bad luck. Nah. I didn't wash my first coat for 8 years. There was no telling what was on that thing.
Just crawling with cancer.
Oh, yeah. And like I said, didn't know what it was, but one of the things that brought it after 9/11, those guys in New York,
Yep.
they started showing up with diseases, and then all of a sudden you've got the International Association of Firefighters going, wait a minute, if they're getting that from this, what else are we breathing in? Yeah. And we talked earlier, Missy, you and I talked about a car. You go look at a car, the vinyl seats, the chemicals, oil, refrigerant for the air conditioning, all the stuff in there, even the anodizing process they do on the metal to make the paint stick, that's hazardous when you catch it on fire. So and think about, this is the other thing a lot of times, because I have to go to workman's comp court and testify a lot of times to make judges understand what we face. Think about a dumpster. We go out on dumpster fires in the fire department all the time. You have no idea. Yeah, is it paint? Is it wood? Is it dead bodies? I mean, you don't know. You don't know what's in there, but we're sticking our head in there and we're breathing that stuff.
The younger firefighters now, I would imagine they're a lot more receptive to the wearing the gear and adhering to the new rules as opposed to the old heads. Oh, because we deal with similar with older officers. They kind of stuck in ways, but with the new rules, the new protective gear, after a while it would just be second nature, and they won't know any better. Yeah, so it's going to be a great improvement on that.
We're hoping so. But I think, like we talked about earlier before we started this, I think it's going to be a generation,
of course,
before we really get it. Because I was one of those guys when I started seeing the numbers. I bought in immediately. We had a captain named Randy Willman that came down with stomach cancer that eventually ended up dying, but he bought in from the minute he got his first cancer diagnosis. He started researching why he got it, and he even helped us make a video. And I remember on there, he goes, guys, this is different. He says, but it's so much better. And he said there's no reason that we should be dying because we're not paying attention to what we're doing.
Yeah.
We need improvements better than no improvement.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. And it's baby steps. And y'all know how it is with any city government. It all boils down to dollars and cents.
Yeah.
And, we spent, I don't know how many, I think they spent over $18 million for a second set of gear for all the firemen. So, but that was one of those things. It was,
it's necessary.
It is. Yeah. It is. Yeah.
We're talking about changing of equipment. I don't think the civilian population understands how much firemen and paramedics get assaulted by the public. And so we've had to adjust to body cameras. How do you feel about a firefighter or a paramedic wearing a body camera?
That's one of those things when we saw you guys starting to wear them, I'll be honest, we're uneducated on that side of it. We get it. I think there's a time when it's very appropriate, it's very helpful, and then there's other times I don't know what the outcome of that would be. I think there are times it would help our guys. If nothing else, it would make them mindful of what they're seeing and what they're doing. It's being recorded. And we all know that guys act a little bit different when they know they're on camera. So, that's one of those things. I was always one of those guys that, if I had an officer that told me, hey, we're going to do it this way, man, I'm going to do it that way every time. I just tried not to bend the rules so that way we didn't, there wasn't any discussion about, well, did you do it the right way or did you not do it the right way? And I'll be honest with you, I got in fights when I was, sure. I still remember a guy at barbecue place up on Greenville Avenue, a homeless guy from New York. He thought we were supposed to take him to Parkland to give him a shower. Well, next thing I know, he's got me in a headlock from behind, and it ended up okay for me, but I was thankful you guys showed up pretty quick. So
firefighters have to do that a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Well, wearing a camera also can be used as a good training tool. Going back and seeing mistakes made or improvements that you could have made.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think that's one of the things where I was always so appreciative that here in Dallas that we work so well with you guys because, y'all look at y'all's job one way and we're kind of another. There's a lot of similarities, but, I'm not strapping a gun on my hip to go to work that day. So I always appreciated you guys being around. And now with the camera stuff, it's, it's technology.
It's getting to a point, though. They've got what is that program with y'all? I saw it.
Right Care?
No, it's where you guys have been equipped with some tactical gears with some ballistic vests.
Oh yeah, well,
and helmets. Yeah. Who was it that got shot up there on Channel 1 not too long ago? The house video showed the firemen coming out there providing cover for the officers to come back. to seek cover. I can't remember who it was. One of them got shot in the leg or got shot in the ankle or something like that. But anyway, the whole point being is, yeah, y'all are being equipped with that and being taught in different various ways of how to respond. First, it started with us with Alex Eastman and Jeff Metzler, and then that evolved into, hey, these firefighters are constantly being put in these situations where you guys would be not in the whatever they called it, not the hot zone, but not the cool zone, the warm zone, where you're not going into where we have shots fired, but you will stage outside
on active
of that,
shooters.
And these individuals, have that gear now, and that's great.
Well, so, and my understanding is because I know we got bulletproof vests and helmet before I left. Every single every position that's riding out that day. Because I don't know if y'all knew this. One of the reasons that on the active shooters, when we were doing our training, when they're sending the active paramedics in there to extract those people out, and then you've got guys like me that weren't an active paramedic. I might be in the cool zone just to take them to where they're getting transported. But I think it was one of the shootings, maybe in the Philippines or somewhere, one of the airports. They had cameras all over the place, so they were able to watch that shooting. But what they also saw in that was that there was like 6 people that ended up dying there just because they bled out on the floor. They'd been shot. They probably could have survived it, but nobody could get in there and get to them quick enough. And you guys are doing your job, trying to keep everybody else safe. And then I think that was one of the things that was relayed to us when we started doing our training on active shooter. If we can pull them out, get them out of your way where it's not something you police officers have to worry about, then those guys might have a chance to live. So that was where I went through all the active shooter training and incident command on that, and I was so impressed with your guys because it was such a good coordination.
It's the evolution of the job too. Not only our job, but y'all's, and how you are now implemented into a lot of things that we do. Right. And it's commendable. I wish I could remember when that was, but I think our chief actually came out and commended the firemen for going out there. They put themselves in harm's way to provide cover for those officers to retreat back so we could provide medical attention to them. They went out there and grabbed them. I can't remember the particulars on it, but so y'all's job it's evolved to where people probably don't even realize that. They don't really know.
You get a 70,000-pound fire truck, and you can create some havoc and block a view or so.
Well, the aggression against first responders is going beyond just aggression towards police now. Right. I mean, it's going on to firefighters too. Hell, Flower Mound not that long ago, back-to-back days they got shot at responding, and that's up in Flower Mound.
Right,
not even a bad part of town.
Right. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I want to get into something that you're a big part of, and it's really important to you, is the honor guard.
You bet.
A lot of listeners don't understand what the honor guard does, and the history behind it, and the just the honor and respect you show the fallen. Can you describe what the honor guard is, and what your role is, and the training you've had to do that?
Our main role is to take care of our fallen, like you said, and it's one of those things that the train. When I first I actually got on the honor guard for DFD before Todd died. There was a guy that had died on duty named Chris Pham, and I remember going to his funeral, and I was seeing those honor guard guys. And a lot of people don't realize when there's a fallen police officer or a fallen firefighter, there's going to be honor guard people with them 24 hours a day until we put that person, in their final resting place. And that's round the clock. I mean, in Dallas, we'll bring guys out of service to help them stand, whether it's at the ME's office, at the funeral home, wherever it is, and they'll stand there. But I had seen that, and those guys looked exhausted. So I got on the honor guard then. Well, being I was a family member of Todd KRODLE, I couldn't participate with the honor guard activities during that funeral. So fast forward to Stan Wilson. Well, I played a role in that one. And the thing I always like to tell people, because I went to a group of guys out of Clearwater, Florida, called the National Honor Guard Academy, and they work with police and fire, and I thought that was so neat that they did it that way, because there's so many times, like we were talking about Officer Smith and then the Dallas 5 and stuff. I was at all those funerals. The Richardson police officer got shot. I was at that funeral, and we were there just to assist. But when I went to that National Honor Guard Academy, we just learned to do so many things the right way and respectfully. And one of the things that I always tell guys, because I was one of our event coordinators for our honor guard team, and I always tell them, look, when you go to a funeral that's a line of duty death funeral, I said, I'd always ask the guys, what's your role there? And they said, well, we're there to take care of the family. And I go, no, your role there is to make sure that everybody understands, all those spouses, all of those firefighters, all those family members sitting out there, they need to know that if something goes south with their officer, this is how they're going to be treated. Hmm. And and I can't tell you how many times that got across to guys. A lot of times you talk about, well, we're going to carry the flags in, we're going to carry the casket, or but when you talk about, what your impact is going to be just by showing up and doing what you're doing. And the thing I liked about having the formal training with the National Honor Guard Academy and the way we did it was they literally walked us through scenarios. I remember we were the academy I went to, we actually did PT at 0600 in the morning. They had us out. It was a team building thing. We all knew that, but about halfway through the week, they came in and they said, hey, we just had a police officer and a fireman get killed in an explosion downtown. Y'all get back to your hotel rooms, get cleaned up, show up in the classroom, and we've got to plan 2 funerals. Well, we walked in. Now, lucky or unlucky for me, I'd already been involved in about 9 funerals here in Dallas, probably about 10 in Houston, so I had a lot of experience. So we walked in, and then they just had little information sheets and phone numbers. This is a family representative. This is a fire department representative. This is a police department representative. You guys need to plan a funeral. And by the end of the day, we were literally at a funeral home loading caskets up onto a fire engine, police officer into a hearse. We were out at the cemetery, and we were actually doing all of the stuff that you would do. And it was gut-wrenching, at some points, because you're sitting there thinking, man, this is for real. And then, fast forward after that, we've had, I guess since I've gotten on the Honor Guard, we've had, probably more than that. We've probably had about 18 if you count all the cancer guys that die, because most of them are being classified as line-of-duty death injuries now. So, but I think it's the Honor Guard to me is one of the most, or it's the least talked about thing.
Absolutely. But
when the guys see you at the services, they're kind of like, man, I don't know if I could do what you're doing.
It's so rich in tradition. Mm-hmm. We were already recorded Chief Jeremy Foy, shout out. He ran the Honor Guard here in Dallas for like 8 years, and he was also over the Honor Guard whenever 7/7 happened. Right. And I was working for him at the time, and I had to see him drop everything and take that on. And he talked in depth about that, and it was really important for him to build that unit up. And I know I couldn't do that job. Even
good job too.
Yeah, absolutely. 13 events in 5 days.
Yeah.
So, it's little things that you don't even think about. I was one of the pallbearers on one of the fallen. Marching with a casket is not the easiest thing to do.
It's not.
I mean, there's technique that and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. We were out there practicing with, because it was a large man, and we had a bunch of 45-pound plates in the casket to practice marching with a casket. Mm-hmm. And it is really difficult. And it's really difficult when you have a ton of people staring at you.
Right.
You're hearing taps and all that. It's just pretty sombering.
Yeah, we always tell our guys on our Honor Guard that it doesn't matter what you're doing or where you're at, somebody's going to be filming you. And so we tell our guys, you've got to be letter perfect every single step of the way. And I think the thing we've always found out is everybody is well-meaning at a line-of-duty death funeral, whether it's a police officer or a firefighter, and everybody wants to help. But I think part of the role of the Honor Guard is just managing all that chaos, because you've got chaplains, you've got chiefs, and you
grieving families.
Yes, you got grieving family members, and you just got to figure out a way to manage that. And I know one of the things that we kind of do on our Honor Guard, because that families, they're going to have chiefs come out and visit, and the chaplains in our fire department are going to stay with them, most of the time. But we always sneak them a business card of one of our guys on the Honor Guard, and we always tell them, say, hey, look, if something's not going the way you want it, or if something's not getting done, you call us. Don't call any of those other. And it's not to sneak around behind it, because we're the ones that are there. We're with your loved one 24 hours a day. There's going to be one of us there. And then on top of that, we just, and our honor guard does a lot of little flag details. We do some parades around town, St. Patrick's Day parade, on Greenville Avenue and stuff like that. And we always use that as practice moments. But our guys got to the point where they're so good, they do a uniform inspection before every single thing they do. All of our guys go to that training, and we just make sure that we're spot on every single time.
Thank you. Thank you for keeping that tradition alive.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's something that if you ever go to one of these other cities, and like I was just talking earlier about going to Colorado Springs for the International Firefighter Association Memorial up there, it is just unbelievable what they can play. And plus, I'm kind of a softie. You hear those bagpipes playing
Sure.
Amazing Grace, I'm done.
Yeah.
It's kicking the stomach.
Yeah, there's no one that can
Yeah.
with the stomach that.
I know you police officers like to shoot guns at funerals and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I always jump.
Yeah, we do too. What kind of mental toll, the preparation and actually going through a funeral or an event, especially a funeral, the mental toll on that?
Oh, gee. Well, it's funny when you were saying that. I don't know if y'all remember Scott Tanksley. He was a firefighter that got knocked off the Clark Road Bridge out here off of 408 back in, I believe that was 2014, and I was one of the first ones that got to Methodist, and he had already been pronounced dead at that point. His family had just showed up about the time I got there. Well, we started doing our watch by the door of his room, and normally when you have a funeral, it'll take about 5 days from the time the incident happens until you have the funeral. So usually we can kind of figure, okay, if we can get through 5 days, we're good. Well, his wife couldn't get all of their family in until I believe that was on a Sunday night or a Monday, and she couldn't get family in until the following Monday. So we had to go 8 days, and so I'm taking my overnight watches and coordinating the guys doing casket watch and stuff like that. Plus, we're taking care of the family. We're making funeral arrangements. We're going to rehearsals. We're teaching guys to load a casket onto a fire engine and all that stuff. Well, we get through it all, and we're all exhausted. I think I had 20 hours of sleep in 8 days. And so didn't think a whole lot about it, but I got back to the fire station. That was on a Monday. I got back to the fire station on Wednesday, was my next day to work. And in the fire department, we do blood pressures and EKGs every 6 months, just kind of check out the guys. Well, when they took mine, I was in a heart arrhythmia called AFib. My heart was, and so the guys were like, we need to take you to the hospital. I said, hang on. I said, I feel fine. I said, I know. I said, let me call my doctor. So I called him, and first thing he said was, well, he says, you've been doing that funeral stuff this week, hadn't you? He said, okay, there's high stress. He says, what's your diet look like this week? And I said, well, I ate whatever crap they put in front of me. It was just, if it was a McDonald's burger or whatever. And he goes, did you drink any coffee this week? I said, 24 hours a day. I was drinking Spark, whatever. Yeah. It had literally thrown my body into, could have been something critical. And the emotional side of it, luckily for us, whenever we have a line of duty death, that's our critical incident stress management team coming. That's a mandatory. So they're going to all the guys that were at that incident. They'll debrief them. Any of the guys that were involved in the funeral, they'll debrief them, and then we always take our honor guard and we debrief them as a unit. So that side of it, to me, it was a little bit satisfying to be on the honor guard, especially during those, because you're making a difference. The emotional side of it, to me, during the incident is what's tough. Just trying to keep it together and making sure you're doing what's right for the family.
Well, I appreciate you doing that because I've seen it firsthand, and it's a job that I don't think I couldn't do day in and day out.
Oh, yeah.
Most of those honor guards are volunteers. They have other jobs they do, and that's just a side. That's basically just a side assignment.
Right.
All right. In 4 decades, almost 4 decades.
Almost 4.
Yeah, almost 4. You should have caught it even 40. I don't know why you left so early.
58 is not the age to be fighting firemen.
That's why you throw the half on the 38.
That's it. That's it. Yeah.
In all those decades of firefighting in a major city, what would you tell a young firefighter starting right now what to do to prepare for the career, both physically and mentally?
Wow, physically and mentally. Well, on the mental side, I would say find somebody that you can talk to, because it's not a matter of if you have a bad run, it's when. We're starting to find out the cumulative effect of these runs, one after another is piling up on these guys. Talk to your spouse. I mean, don't make it a big secret what your job is. I mean, it's okay to talk to other people about it. You can still be tough and cry a little bit. It's not going to hurt you. That part of it. The big thing I would tell guys is if you'll just be a good person. That's the thing. I was involved in an interview here a while back that a guy asked me. He said, if you could go back to the 40-year firefighter, if you could go back and tell the guy your first year, give him some advice. I still remember in that interview, I told him, I said, I can teach you things to be a better firefighter, but if I don't teach you how to be a good person, I failed. So it's one of those things where, and y'all know this, if you go out on a call, there's things that are legal and then there's things that are right. You do the right thing. I never got in trouble. I mean, I had 2 letter of counseling in my entire career. Both of them got tossed out because it was a question on a medical deal. But I mean, I never had a letter of reprimand in my career. And I always just thought to myself, if I do the right thing, everything's going to work out. And that's what I try to do. One of the things I would tell the young guys is get in there and learn your job top to bottom, sideways, up to every which way you can. Because you talked a while ago about what was it like getting off the ambulance rotation. Well, when I got off, I was assigned to that truck company. Well, I'd always been on either an engine company or an ambulance company my whole career for the first 10 years of my career. Well, then all of a sudden I'm on a piece of equipment I'm not familiar with. So I go to my first fire as a truck company. Well, my job then was to go inside and pull ceiling down and make sure there's not fire in the attic, breach walls and stuff like that. Man, I come out, I'm dirty, I'm smoked up, we're hot, sweaty, and everything. I pull my face piece off and I look around and I said, hell, I don't know what to do now. So I had to go back and learn that different aspect of my job. And for the next 5 years, I would literally go out to that truck company and I would take chainsaws. I would take them completely apart. So I knew that piece of equipment inside and out, top to bottom. I mean, I wanted to be so good at my job that if guys said, hey, how do we use this? I wanted somebody to look around and say, where's Lindsey at? He knows. That's
great advice.
Yeah, and y'all are the same way as we are. That the older guys need to be teaching the younger guys, not just because of the practical aspect of knowing your job, but the experience of this is why you're going to do this way, and that's to me that's just invaluable. And I think the last probably 10 years of my career, that was the toughest part for me was backing off. When we got calls and saying, well, I'm going to cut that car door open, or I'm going to do this at that fire, and instead of saying, hey, you young guy, you get up there and let me coach you on how to do this the right way.
I think that's a perfect way to wrap it up.
Oh, cool.
I want to thank you for coming on. Thank you for your service to the city of Dallas. Almost 4 decades, as I keep mentioning.
You keep throwing that out there.
Hey,
it's hard to feel old.
No, that's nothing to be ashamed of. No. Give your mind, body, and soul that long to the city. The city needs to appreciate you and what you've done.
Thank you for continuing. Even you've ended your career, but you continue to help and educate and prevent, and thank you.
Well, you know how we are. I mean, once you're a firefighter or police officer, you're always that way. And that was one of the funny things when I left. I'm on the International Firefighter Association Honor Guard up there in Colorado Springs. So I asked my chief, I said, hey, I need to take my Honor Guard uniform with me. I don't mind paying for it or whatever, but I need to take it with me. And he looked me dead in the eye and he says, you can take it with you, but if something goes south in the fire department, you're coming back to help. And I've been back for a line of duty death funeral since then. So that's the cool part. I don't think I'll ever completely wash the firefighter, stuff off of me, but it was time to go when I left.
Well, service is in your blood.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for your service. And like Misty said, your continuous selfless acts. It's very obvious you have a strong passion to help. It's also very obvious that you're driven to this career field for a reason.
Oh, yeah. Appreciate it. Yeah.
And we're very grateful for your service.
I think so.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, brother, hey, sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey, Mrs., hey, mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Down when you're lonely, I'll pull you up. Life leaves you heavy when the going gets tough. I'll be your shoulder, together we'll run up from the bottom, yeah, we'll rise above. Hey brother, hey sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far the sun and the moon, I'll never give up on you. Sister, I'll never give up on you. Hey Mrs., hey mister, I'll see this all the way through. No matter how far, for the gold and the blue, I'll never give up on you.